envision three female attorneys coming together to have our voices heard. Each of us would have different opinions, different passions, different backgrounds, and different views. Although we are different and unique, we are able to come together to discuss our experiences, navigating through the legal profession and this thing called life. Now, the vision has come alive, and we invite you each and every week to listen to us as we talk about what's trending in the news and our legal insight. Tackle real life issues that affect not only us as attorneys, but us as women of color. Disclaimer: this podcast is intended to provide entertainment and general information. The information provided and the views given are not intended to constitute legal advice and should not be relied upon as legal representation. All views expressed on this podcast are our own and do not represent the opinions of any entity whatsoever we are affiliated with now or will be affiliated with in the future. Hey guys, it's your girl Brandy, and we're back with another episode of No Further Questions. Before we get started, let's reintroduce ourselves. I'm Brandy. Sam.
No, I'm Samantha. How y'all doing?
And Taria.
Hey guys, it's your favorite host of all, T Hutch. Y'all see how my voice dropped when I got there?
I was wondering if you were trying to do like a Ron Burgundy impression, but I wasn't.
I love Ron Burgundy.
I thought that's what you were going for, but
I don't know.
You got a teleprompter over there?
I do, and it's saying, pass it back to the host.
I'm sorry.
It did. That's what it said. We have a guest. We have a guest.
We do. This is what you get. I am sorry. Bringing back to the stage one of our favorite friends of the show, Akila Basie. She's like our legal analyst when it comes to I'm going to say trials of the century or trials of the year.
Trials of the decade, at least.
Right, at least. You know, she was here with the Amber Geiger case, and now, you know, we got this murder trial going on. So, Akila, reintroduce yourself to our audience.
Hey, well, I am so glad to be back with you ladies. Had a blast last time, and I'm so excited to come back and talk about another case with you all. Unfortunately, we're here again talking about another murder. In this case, an execution before a conviction or even an arrest or anything of that sort. But we are where we are. But I'm excited to come back with you guys and just really dive into the case and what we've all been seeing. And, you know, we had some really great conversations before we hit the air. So I'm excited to bring those on air and bring everybody in.
We did have some great conversations out there. So let's go ahead and get it started. Now, Akila, remind everybody, you were a former prosecutor for Harris County District Attorney's Office, correct?
I was a former prosecutor. I started, where I started my career, and I started in special crimes and then worked through the trial bureau, and then I left as a felony prosecutor. And then I started my own practice where I've been doing that now, and where I do a lot of criminal defense and discrimination work as well.
Cool beans. So we would say you're our, resident expert, prosecutor expert.
To cue the Law and Order theme song, which
right.
Is
Can we bring her back for that?
yeah. But I think that's probably, trademarked or something. So we probably can.
But we can take some sponsorship from Dick Wolf, But so everybody knows that the Derek Chauvin trial is going on. He murdered George Floyd. We all saw it on film, on camera. It was recorded. So now the trial is going on. The prosecution, as of today, have rested their case, and the defense is getting ready to start their case. So, but before we, kind of see where the defense may go, my question to you is, Akila, since the prosecution has the burden of proof, right now, do you think they're proving it? Are they proving their burden?
I think that they proved it. I think they've, I was actually I will say this, I started this case I looked at it kind of skeptical once I saw the opening statements. They seemed very lackluster. they seemed almost like they were going through the motions. And so at that point in time, I kind of said, okay, well, we're probably looking at the same result that we've been looking at, unfortunately, in a lot of cases like this. But I was pleasantly surprised when I started listening to the witnesses over and over again, and a lot of the tactics that I really appreciated by the prosecution among the trial. And so I think that they have done a good job on putting on a strong case, a solid case, differentiating Derek Chauvin from law enforcement, and getting law enforcement we often don't see to break through that blue wall of silence and testify in favor of the prosecution, I think has been phenomenal work on behalf of the prosecution.
What are some that I learned from this trial is that the people who work with him didn't like him. And let that be a lesson to be nice to your coworkers. You never know when you're on trial for murder and who's waiting to take the stand against you. Because they did not like him. On top of him being a murderer, they've been waiting for him to get caught up.
You could tell. Even his boss. They gave him
every way to get out of it. So do you think that maybe he didn't use excessive force? He used excessive force every time. Even when he used the office vending machine, he was very excessive.
So what are some of the tactics that you did mention just now that they had some awesome tactics, the prosecution, besides breaking that blue wall to get them to testify on their behalf? What are some of the tactics do you think that was helpful?
Well, one thing is I remember, put on my prosecutor hat now, right? But one thing I do remember is being a prosecutor that we'd have to anticipate what the opposing counsel or the defense attorney would bring up in their defense, right? And the goal then is to essentially take the wind out of the sails so that when it's presented to them, it's secondhand information, right? Mm-hmm. This is nothing that's going to shock and awe the jury and completely dismantle your case because you've anticipated it. You have to take in the good with your case along with the bad in your case. And a lot of times, just as people, right, we like to focus on the good things or why someone, was either a shining star or something of that sort when it's somebody whose side we're for, and then why someone was, just this completely wicked person when it's someone we're against. But the truth of the matter is that trials like life are much more complex than that, right? People are much more complex than that. And so, you have to take your victims, you have to take them as you get them, right? One thing I heard a lot when this happened in the summer was everyone was saying, oh, this is who everybody has chosen to be their martyr. This is this man who's X, Y, and Z. Well, the truth of the matter is we didn't choose a martyr. We got what we got because of what this officer did. And I think that people have to really understand that, like, we're not choosing who we go to bat for. We're not choosing who those people are that are unfortunately become victims of the criminal, of officers who use excessive force and things of that sort. Those officers very much choose who those victims are, and they choose those people, not us.
So when you mentioned about we have to take the victim for who they are, I did notice that the prosecution brought on George Floyd's girlfriend. She was on and she testified. She testified about the drug use. Now, we know not to put too much weight into social media, but a lot of people had a social media frenzy about how dare she bring up the drug use or there they go or whatever. Do you think that was a good tactic for them to have her talk about the drug use?
Absolutely. One thing is that again, like it's not a movie, right? So we didn't pick our victims. Is that a lot of us, across social economics and race, religion, we all either struggle or know someone who we love dearly that has struggled with drug abuse, right? Substance abuse. It's never really that far from anyone. And that's something that I've learned. So for them to humanize this struggle that he had was extremely important, because what they did was say that he had a back injury and then he got addicted to opioids like so many people do, right? And that it was a struggle, right? He understood that he had to come out of this, and he was trying and trying again, right? So what you're doing is you're humanizing a struggle. The idea of a victim being vulnerable is something that I think really resonates with the jury, right? When I was looking at it, it's a fact that you don't want, but if you have it, you have to use it to your advantage. And by putting on someone who also struggled, who, the girlfriend was very human. We saw her on there crying and talking about their nicknames and how he first prayed when they first met and things of that sort, right? The way they brought that out was, I think, probably one of the strongest tactics, because we've seen that since the summer. Everybody said he died of a drug overdose. He died of a drug overdose. For them to ignore that fact, that was what the defense attorney was going to hang their hats on, would have been, I think, borderline like malpractice, right? They needed to do that. And so now, what also was, I thought was really interesting in that line of questioning, they said, you all have used drugs before, yes. Well, did he die then, right? Well, we know the answer is no, because we know when he did die. But what you're getting into that record on that testimony is that this has happened before. He has used drugs before, and never once were they the cause of his death. He has used the same amount of drugs again. They were not the cause of his death. He did not die until this officer's knee was in his neck. And so what they're really doing is they're taking and extinguishing that idea that this was an overdose, or that his body was not used to the chemical reactions from drug use.
And they've actually brought in some really good experts to kind of, shut that down and be like, okay, he had this in his system, but for the knee wasn't on his neck, he would be alive. He would be able to breathe. And so, yeah.
And I think it was cool that what we have to remember when we are watching this trial is that the burden is beyond a reasonable doubt, right? And so when prosecutors, a lot of people like, why you got to bring that up, that are watching this, and it's like, you have to be able to push beyond a doubt, like, oh, well, maybe he could have died. No, but wait, because, so you always want to be the attorney, even though I'm not a prosecutor. I do family law, and we deal with bad facts all the time. And what I always tell my clients is, let's control the narrative. Yeah. Let's control how we portray. Okay, yeah, you may have been a past alcoholic or drug opioid addicted person, but let's control how we tell the story. Because once it's on cross, you are restricted within that scope and you can't go back, right? So I think that the lay person should just remember that it was their way of controlling the narrative and still being able to reach that burden and remove any doubts that the jury could possibly have.
So do you think, as a former prosecutor, that the prosecution has done anything wrong in your eyes, or they could have done something better? I mean, we've talked about kind of taking the wind, out of the defense's side, but is there anything else that they possibly could have done better you would critique them on?
I think that always comes down when you get a verdict, right? Like you determine what you could have done better. Because what I think is that I do appreciate how they've put on the testimony. I think that they've called all the witnesses that I would have. The only thing I think I would have probably done, but I understand why they didn't, was probably add a little bit more of an emotional appeal to a lot of it. But also I understand why they don't, right? Because what you don't then want is the defense attorney to argue, do not look at the emotions. That's all they had was a case based off of emotions, right? So I think it depends on what your trial style is. And so, I think that they have reiterated every element of the crime time and time again. I think that they have anticipated what's going to come and asked those questions. The only thing that I would be concerned about is whether or not just like I said, the emotional appeal, that they were able to truly capture their jury for the entire time when such important testimony was being given, and possibly, a little bit maybe in how they mixed up those witnesses and things of that sort. But I honestly, I think that I'm pleasantly surprised with what I've seen. It's probably one of the strongest cases against an officer that I have seen in recent years.
Can I ask one more question? And I don't know if this is on the outline or not. So, Madam Hostess, please tell me if I'm wrong.
No, ask any questions.
The fact that this jury is not sequestered, when you think of the other large cases, do you think that comes into play, good or bad, that they get to go home every night, they get to travel through the streets, and I mean, they're bound to talk to somebody, right?
I mean, they're not allowed, but a lot of the stuff is under oath, right? Like you've sworn to not discuss this, and I mean, you can only take someone's word, right, to a certain degree. I mean, even when we've seen it at things with OJ trial, when juries are sequestered, if they want to discuss this case and find ways, they do, right? And I would say that the thing about this case is different is that it's probably one of the very few cases that the majority of people I see are on the same side, right? There's not this big cultural split that we often see. One, because we've all seen it on video, right? So we're not talking about this case where you're putting pieces together. We're talking about a case that, I mean, it was hard to watch for 9 minutes. Literally, I mean, of course, I mean, I'm not being serious, but the state could have played the video and then rested, right? Essentially. And so it's one of those things where I'm like, it's kind of like one of those, the facts kind of are the facts. And you've taken, a lot of the wind, like I said, the wind out of the sails. They've anticipated what they're going to say, what the defense is going to say. They've told us, and they haven't been saying much different. The witnesses they've been questioned haven't been much different. They've had great witnesses. And so, I mean, I think when you're having a case, the idea of like sequestering a jury is basically so that they're not being influenced outside culturally one way or the other. But in this case, I think that there's just this cultural alliance almost as to what's going to happen. And so I think a lot of us want to see this done right. And so, I think a lot of people, hopefully would not infringe upon the jury's duty, knowing that duty, and have this case have to be retried.
Do you think that the prosecutors intentionally tried to take race and emotion out of the equation on trying this case and just focus on the facts?
I think they did, right? I think they did. And I think they did for a few reasons. One is that a lot of that, unfortunately, it's going to be a hard time to get officers to come in and testify, because there is absolutely now that is definitely a cultural divide, and it does hinge largely on race, with a lot of minority communities and officers, right? So you would have to take that out of the equation. But then you also have to look, do you also need it, right? He's not charged with a hate crime. So where does the relevance come in for race at this point in time, right? Is that just something to emotionally, or I guess unethically charge the jury up, right? That could lead for the defense to move for a mistrial, right? If too much of that came in. I think there's clearly this cloak of racism, and that breeds onto the relationship of many African Americans, relationship with law enforcement, that we all see, that we all know certain truths, that if George Floyd were white, this most likely would not have happened. These are all truths that we know. These are all things that we know. They don't have to be said, right? Sometimes saying what's understood don't need to be said, right? I think that's kind of one of those things.
And then the same thing after the trial, like, told y'all.
You said what? Yeah.
We'll say it after trial, told you guys.
And, the bad thing is, when you were on here the last time, it was about, the murder of a Black man. So it's like, here we are again,
exactly,
having the same conversation and the same story.
It is.
So, but as we know, and so basically, as we know though, we can, we're looking at this, the world is watching, the world is always watching. A lot of people literally believe the prosecution, like you said, is putting on a really great case. They are proving their burden. They have great facts. Videos speak, experts speak, witnesses speak. However, juries, always, make the decision. But in your opinion or whatever, because we've had OJ Simpson where, like I said, and this is the conversation to our audience that we were kind of having a little bit after, like right before we got on the air. So we saw OJ Simpson. Marsha Clark probably thought she had a great case, and then Johnny Cochran came in and said you must acquit if it don't fit. If the glove don't fit, you must acquit. Casey Anthony, I think she even admitted that she killed her accidentally killed her daughter or whatever, and she got off. So what is something from, I guess, on your end and your experience and bringing in a defense side that maybe the defense could bring to like bust this case wide open? Or what do you think that is missing? You think there's something missing?
So I think that one thing about this case is that, and I know it's hard for that young girl to report it so steadily, but the fact that this is this purely on video, there's no question. People are saying he cannot breathe. Get off of his neck. I cannot breathe. Calling out, watching this officer just very callously and depraved lay on this man's neck. I think that those issues come into play, right? Hands in the pocket, his demeanor. He can't say I feared for my life, which you often get, right? Even with the Rodney King, we said it was on video, but we didn't hear the exchange, right? We don't know that either. But this case is actually very, very, very different. It's very up close, very personal, almost too personal, right? And so I'm going to have to separate it from Casey Anthony, one, because I did not watch that case enough. But when we look at OJ, a lot of times cases are tried in the court of public opinion, right? During the 92, you had riots, you had, forgive me for not remembering her name, but the young Black girl who was just killed, earlier at a convenience store for some juice that she brought right before, and the lady who shot her received probation, right? So you're in this really like hot time when OJ came, and Johnny Cochran, what he did, he definitely he colorified OJ, right? Like he blackened him up a little bit. We all know that. So that, it didn't have to be OJ. That would have been any African-American man who was standing trial at that point in time. Again, we just got OJ. That's really what that was. We looked at how society looked at that case, right? And so I think that too oftentimes is that attorneys, what we do is we get into our files, we get into our reports, we get into our, little world in our courtrooms, and then we think that this is how the world sees it. But you have to remember, everyone's bringing in their own cultural lenses. And so while somebody might have said they didn't see the video about George Floyd, I guarantee you there's not one person on that jury who had never heard about this case. Mm-hmm. I guarantee there's not one person who did not watch protests across this nation. I guarantee you that, and so you have to look at our culture right now is to this point where, people want officers to be held accountable. This is, it's transcending this racial thing, and it's becoming a justice issue for so many people. A lot of people, who are very pro officer, they want to believe that, see, this is a bad guy and we've gotten rid of him. Our good guys testified against the bad guy, right? So they're rooting for that. Then there are a lot of people who might be more anti-law enforcement as they are right now. And they're saying, see, he needs to go as well, right? The consensus is the same, right? Whether you think he's a bad guy, he's an exception, or whether you think he is the rule, either way it goes, everyone can agree that he's got to go.
But you know what? I thought that the defense, and maybe they will, I was waiting for the mental health card. I was waiting for them to say he suffers from like PTSD. He didn't know what he was doing. He was triggered of some sort.
Chauvin?
Yeah, I thought that they were going to try to say that he was like, or that he's mentally unwell. So I was really surprised when they just went with opioid addiction and all this stuff, because I thought that for sure he was going to be some ex-army vet or something who has some PTSD.
His demeanor was just so off. Like if someone who is typically mentally ill is having an episode, it's a very manic behavior oftentimes, right? There's some type of,
Right.
you know what I mean? You could see some type of ability they're not comprehending reality as is. But one, he had his hands in his pockets, very clearly standing and staring at the group of people who were telling him to get off. And then when they approached him, what you also saw was him grab his gun or his mace or something. Mm-hmm. So he's very cognitive, very aware of the situation and what's happening as it's happening. So I think that if they were to try to play that mental health card, it would look way too attenuated, way too separated, like you're really grasping at straws here. I think this idea of this riotous crowd is very, you know what I mean, is a far reach, that they're trying to play. So I think any type of mental health issue would have been also, brought down to the fact that, I believe that he's had like certain infractions before. He's
had several. I told you, I don't know if he made the wrong potato salad at the barbecue or slept with somebody's wife. But his
all of the above
are not feeling him, okay?
I think it's the personality that Akilah just talked about, right? Even his demeanor on the day of this incident, this murder, was off to the fact of a cockiness and arrogance, almost like a God complex. It's the things that the police don't want you, the adjectives the police don't want you describing them as, right? And I think also, my humble opinion, that's why we're having a trial, because this same person that's cocky, pompous, arrogant, God complex is not going to take a plea because he did nothing wrong. Mm-hmm. And so we're here. And I hope that jury knocks him down and lets him know that he is not God. There's only one and he's not it.
Do they have a separate sentencing, like in Texas, a sentencing trial, or is it?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they have a.
When we talk about the jury segment, we can definitely, bring that out.
Because he may be arrogant because he's like, I get guilty, but I'm probably still gonna get probation.
No. But let's switch to, so as I stated, the defense is, getting ready to, the prosecution just rest, and the defense is getting ready to present their case. And now we can speculate, but we really honestly don't know until, that time what the defense is going to say. Akilah, now as a criminal defense attorney practicing criminal law, what would you do? If Derek Chauvin was your client?
If he was my client, we wouldn't be here, right? We wouldn't have been this far along. That's just the truth of the matter. We would not have been here at all.
You would have had a real conversation.
Listen, you're going to have to take your knots, okay, and get on out of here, because we're not putting this evidence on. Nobody needs to watch this video again, right? I mean, that's basically what I would say, is that, do you understand what this video shows, right? Like, I would make you sit down. Don't try to defend it. Don't try to turn away from it. Watch the video in silence. That's what you need to do.
Right.
And understand that so many people have watched this video, and that you have been the cause of so much racial tension and unrest, and actually other murders in America, right? Because of what you've done, that we're going to end this as quickly as we can.
Correct.
Or today.
Yourself in public around like you need to start now.
Yeah.
Talking to people that don't exist, okay? Like you need to
Calling them
right now.
Calling them ancestors and stuff.
No, not yet. Like you need to start. Huh? What?
Yeah, right.
Like you need to start clucking and barking like a dog today, brother. Today. Yes.
Oh man, yeah.
That is okay. Trying to get their mental health right.
that that mental health, like you are not competent. What did I do? I thought he was Batman. Like,
Right.
you have to sit for trial, brother, because I've also watched his demeanor during trial. It is very awkward.
It's a coldness, right?
Yeah, it's like even the girl that you were on the show before, that she was crying, that I didn't care about. But she did have her tears.
She looked remorseful.
They didn't move me. But she had them, right? Um, he I don't know if they told, because it's very awkward. You always tell your client don't like be over emotional. But I always give my clients like a legal pad to like write things down to look like they're doing something important. But he just is there.
I think. Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying just went back what Taria said. He got that God complex. He thinks he didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, and there's if you do criminal law, it's like most people in the criminal justice system, is that they're human, right? Like they appear to be human, they come off as human, but every so often you will encounter people who are in there who have this sense of coldness, right? They don't have a connection with humanity, and I think it's really important because what we saw is that officer said is that when they talk about calling the police on the police, he's like, I wanted someone who was human, right? I didn't feel that human connection. The African American man who talked about how he was screaming and called the police on the police, on Derek Chauvin. So, and you look at him, and he looks very void of humanity, right? The idea of seeing a human hurting, and whether or not you choose to act, just feeling that sympathy and that empathy as another person, you don't see that in him, right? It's very rare, even in the criminal justice system, to see a person like that, even those who commit the most heinous crimes. But you see that with him. I see that in him, and it's very scary.
Right. We call those what, psychopaths, perhaps?
So psycho or sociopath is one of them. Yeah,
sociopath.
Yeah. I guess you're a psychopath once you killed somebody because of it, right? Though.
Well, I think a sociopath though can act like they care. Like I think
they
they can act like they have emotions
for their own
for their own gain. He doesn't have that. So
no,
he's a psychopath.
Yeah. So would you so if you were the attorney on this case, would you have him testify?
Absolutely not. I mean, what is he gonna say? It's on video. Like that is
they might as well put him in blackface and have him tap dance.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. If he got on the stand to testify, the prosecution could then get on the cross-examine him, and I would have played the tape for the whole 9 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sit there and let you watch it, and then I'm gonna ask you questions.
And then I would stare at you in your face as I watched it.
Correct. No, I agree.
And watch, and but the thing is this, the jury would do the same thing. I guarantee if they put that on there, they would look at his face on that
the entire time.
And what do you say? And then the thing is this, right? The question, what do you say to this? What do you have to say? I mean, like, it's almost like this open-ended question that could kind of like, I mean, you defend yourself against it when we're watching it. So either you're going to have to be remorseful, or you're going to have to completely like try to gaslight what we're watching, right? So you really don't get too far either way. I think what they're going to try to do is say, I think what I've kind of seen the hints of is this idea of his knee was in his shoulder, not his neck. I've seen that.
So then basically try to disprove some of the experts, or not necessarily disprove, but just kind of bringing their own experts. Like, well, maybe like you said, where his knee was, or maybe he wasn't really suffocated. He was something else. Like,
right. He could have had a panic attack and stopped his heart because of this. Right. I mean, that's literally what I see, but there's no way to humanize this officer as being scared, right? As, not knowing what he was doing. Right. And I would say, like, if Mr. Floyd would have passed away maybe within the first minute, right, you might have that. I didn't know. I was worried about the crowd, but 10 minutes, that's an extremely long time.
Like, do you know how hard you have to kneel for 10 minutes. Like just doing squats, like when you work out, to squat and hold that for 10 minutes is hard.
Yeah.
Like you literally are taking it all the way in, sir. So if he does take the stand, the only thing he needs to do is fake a heart attack. He needs to grab his heart and he needs to.
That's all they got. That's all they got. Make it look good.
And add the mental health. Don't forget he got.
People be like, he actually has some sort of remorse because he had a stroke. Like he needs to do something because I don't see it, but
you know though, but a person like that with that type of arrogance, it would not necessarily surprise me if he did, because what we all know is that when you're looking at this, is it ultimately is his decision whether or not he takes that stand. You
that's when you file the motion to withdraw. Your Honor, I like to withdraw. He likes to represent himself.
In the middle of trial, right?
In the middle, Your Honor, he has fired me. He would like to represent himself.
Yeah. And this judge is going to say denied. I mean, no.
I would just get it on the record so that if he ever tries to appeal for ineffective.
Oh, yeah. I'll ask him. That was my first question. So, Mr. Chauvin, please state your name. And you and I talked about this, correct? Yeah. And you're testifying against my advice, correct? Look, now we'll continue.
Correct. No. I will go a step further. And you heard the judge deny to withdraw from this case. Is that correct? Okay. Now,
I mean, but yeah, I don't see it, right? So I
you
think
would take the stand, and I wouldn't ask any questions.
I mean, yeah,
you asked your questions. You did. You was there, and after the judge denied, the defense rests.
That's right.
Yeah, no, because you get on cross, you can only ask what, like whatever I ask or whatever. Like I'm direct. What's your name? I rest. Yeah.
No, you can ask more than on cross.
You can ask more than that.
You can ask on criminal defense.
Mm-hmm. Now on redirect, you can only ask what was asked on cross-examination.
Right.
Well, cross-examination, the world is your
oyster. That's the reason why they don't get them on the stand. Because you don't know what they're gonna say.
The fifth. Oh,
you can ask 4 questions all you want to. I'm gonna ask you about 300.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm gonna plead the fifth on all of them.
He better fall out and down.
I'm objected to everything. Relevancy.
He better die, because we gonna, as soon as get up, is he lying?
Objected to people and everything. Optional completeness.
This is one of those cases, like, as a former prosecutor, where you would like chomp at the bit hoping that this defendant got on the stand, right? Mm-hmm. This is actually baby prosecutor practice type defendants that you want on the stand. I mean, you literally don't have to do anything but take him step by step through the video, right? And ask him each question about it. No matter what he says,
you still have the video.
Watches the video.
See, this is why I'm not in criminal, because I would just play the tape, be like, "This you?" I rest my case.
This you?
That's you right there.
This you right here. Is that your knee?
Okay. Yeah.
9 minutes, bro.
But I mean, I don't think that they will. I think what they're going to try to do is say, I mean, they've kind of given us that he did what he was trained to do, is this idea, right? So they're going to find an officer somewhere. Mm-hmm. Who probably has just as many infractions and whatnot, that says that he did everything proper, he did everything right, and the riotous crowds are what caused him to lose focus on Mr. Floyd and make sure that he was contained.
Correct.
And I think that, but I think one thing is also they're going to tell us that we couldn't see every crowd. We only saw the crowd that were in front of the grocery store or the convenience store, right? There are people behind the police car. But I also think that's why the prosecution has been showing us the same video from different angles. Here's where the car is. Here's how this happening. Here is, what's happening over here. And I think that they also really caught on that, I want to say, is that when they put that 911 dispatcher on and she talked about how she thought the screen had froze, right?
Yeah.
So that's really important to show that there was no riot. Because how many people stand still in a riot, right? If someone thinks the screen has frozen, there's not a lot of movement happening around you. And even in the most peaceful protest we saw in the summer, there was movement. You didn't think anything was still, right?
Even if it was a riot, though, are police Who do you call when there's a riot? Last time I checked, you call the police, huh? Who you call?
I mean, well, you know what? They tried to call the police on the police, right? So that's the issue here. It's like, I mean, to me, that's crazy. You know how I'm like, to me, that just brought this sense of like just this scared and just this aloneness that I think people, the prosecution did a good job, or the witnesses did a good job of like showing that how so many people in America that are disenfranchised feel that we are so desperate that we're calling the colleagues of the person who is literally killing us to come and save us, right? In hopes that we get someone who has that sense of humanity is what they're kind of pushing out there, right? That idea of calling the police on the police, it's a terrifying message that's consistently going that the prosecution, the people are desperate, right? And what you
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, you know what I found to be so astonishing to me throughout this trial is they talk about this riot, right? But as scared and as disenfranchised and as angry as we all were, everyone was so scared for their own lives that nobody jumped on him to stop him.
And they all said that during when they testified.
Because they were so afraid to stop this person because of their own life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how scary does that have to be? Because I can tell you, if this was just a regular person, not a police officer,
immediately.
Yeah. He was in the hood, it would have been ceased. But that is just how powerful this law enforcement badge, the blue, back the blue, has become. Is that like you watch someone die, but you're so afraid that they're going to kill you or someone else. The only thing you can do is call one of their other colleagues.
Exactly. And so like, but remember, if you see, like, it almost looked like when you look at the crowd versus the police that were out there, it almost looked like this one-on-one, right? Like the numbers were almost equal. And then you have this officer, they're equipped, right? So these people are going to and from the store. Right. Most of us don't walk around with just weapons on us, right? Like that. So, but you're dealing with officers who have handcuffs, they have tasers, they have batons, they have guns, you know, and then you're dealing with multiple of them, right? Yeah. And so, you know, what can't you do besides yell and record, right? A lot of us, our cell phones are our weapons, right? That's what we use. And
even if you have a gun, what are you gonna do? Pull a gun out on a police officer?
Sure, exactly.
So it's just like you are torn between doing what's right for humanity and living to see another day, because I don't know if it would have been helpful for them to push the officer off and then we wouldn't have the video.
Well, they tried though. Remember, if you saw a piece of the video, a few walked off the curb, and then that's when he grabbed
the gun. Yeah.
So they
still on the neck. Why he's still on the neck bind, mind
you. Oh yeah, he's not getting off there. No way. Yeah.
Again, he cannot get on the stand. I just to reiterate one more time, because his knee is in the neck and he's still getting the gun out. Again, I would just pause on those screen stills, and I'm not criminal defense, but I would just kind of, you know, as a prosecutor, I would just stop each still. Where's your hand going? Oh, it's going to the gun. Your knee's still there.
Why were the other officers not held accountable in this?
Well, we're waiting trials.
Their trials are different. They're later. Yeah, their trials are later. But this brings us to the end of our show. This was a great conversation. We can talk about this all day long, but we got to wrap up. So, Akilah, thank you again for your insight. Thank you for bringing this to light. Like I said, I'm very interested to see what the defense will do. So we definitely appreciate it. Thank you again. Let everybody know. Well, this is the part of the show where we do a rest my case. So, Akilah, you're familiar with the rest my case, where, you know, you want to lay anything to rest. It doesn't have to be legal. It can be pop culture. It can be anything. So, Tari looks like she's thinking, so I'm going to go to Sam. Sam, what's your rest my case?
Okay, so this is a little old, but I didn't get a chance to get this off my chest, okay? So this has to do with like the little Nas X in those shoes, Satan shoes. Stop giving that man attention, please, if he wants to go to hell, let him go in peace. Don't let that disturb your spirit. Like, people are really upset that he was wearing a wig, sliding down a stripper pole to hell. If that's what that man wants to do in his music video, let him do that and move on with your life. You ain't even got to watch. I didn't even watch the whole video. Why? Because I don't care. But you keep retweeting and talking about these shoes. Look, if Lil Nas X wants to go to hell and worship the devil, let him do it. But I won't be giving him any streams, any likes, any looks, anything. So let him go to hell in peace.
Taria, you gotta rest my case.
Yes. So during this trial, I've seen so many people retweet, post, only in America do you witness a murder and still need a trial to prove the person guilty. And I say that because of our Constitution and because of the laws of the land, everybody deserves their time in court. And just like you want your cousins, your sons, your daughters to get off of death row because they were convicted mistakenly, because they were identified mistakenly, this man too needs his day in court. It's not a waste of the government's money. It's the same opportunity that you want your family to have, and you want you to have, because we're all sane today until we're not. And then we're killing somebody and then hoping that someone will give us our shot in our day in court. So before we're so quick to say, lock him up, throw away the key, remember that when they locked up your son, your daughter, your cousins, your nieces and your nephews, and then give them their day in court.
Taria get on here and choose violence every time. We're never gonna be able to have a video with comments on.
Wait a minute, that's a fun fact.
Comments off again. Every time she get on here, tell people about themselves, and now we gotta turn off the comments.
Akila, do you ever rest my case?
Okay, well, mine's not quite as fun, but I'm gonna tell everybody this. When you get the opportunity, go get vaccinated so we can get back to hugging and loving each other and enjoying, shop girl summer. So, so get vaxxed.
Akila secretly says she's ready for the hot girl summer.
Because we didn't have one last summer. So you
know. Or the white boy summer that, has been trending lately. So.
I saw that. Like, can we have something, right?
Well, Akila, tell everybody where they can follow you.
You can follow me on Twitter at Akila Basie, Instagram at Akila Basie as well. Or you can follow my firm on either one at Basie Law, BACYLAW, on both Instagram and Twitter. And we're on Facebook as well. Same name.
Brandy, you didn't have a rest my case.
Right. I mean, I have a rest my case tonight. So my rest my case is basically be nice to everybody. I'm not saying be their friend, be nice. It doesn't hurt to speak or smile or whatever. Because I was watching the news earlier last week about the shooting in Bryan College Station. And one of the guys that witnessed it, because basically it was a coworker was upset and shooting up the place. And the suspect pointed the gun at this guy, literally pointed the gun at him. And he pointed at him, and then he turned and shot the person behind him. And the guy said when he was being interviewed, the coworker, he was like, I was nice to him. We wasn't friends. I knew of him or whatever. I would speak to him and I kept it going. So the reporter asked, do you think he spared your life? And he was like, he was broken because the guy behind him got shot. And because he felt like, because he just said hi to that guy, that murderer spared his life. So what I'm saying is just be nice to people, because you never know what they're going through. I'm not condoning what that man did about shooting and violence or nothing, but it doesn't hurt to just say hi.
Brandy, the call is coming from inside the house. Does that mean that you're going to be nice to people now?
Listen, so you can follow us at No Further Questions.
I just want to...
NFQ Pod on Twitter, and on Instagram, No Further Q. Sam, they follow you today?
It depends. Brady, you gotta be nice to people. I want to get this on the record.
Sam, are they following Taria? Are they following you?
Of course they're following me. Listen, every week I give you wisdom that no one else is willing to tell you. So keep following me. Join me. Instagram, Simply Being Tea, and we can talk about.
Y'all follow Taria and put in her comments all that backlash. Don't put that on us. That ain't got nothing to do with us. That's Taria.
Someone has to tell them. There has to be. You gotta have someone that keeps you grounded and rooted and tell you about your foolishness. You can't walk this earth being ignorant.
Or you're gonna be on trial for murder.
Here and choose violence. I love y'all, the people that listen here. I'm nice and I'm sweet. We got Brandy over here telling you be nice. We got Taria telling you to give everybody a chance because you want your brothers and your cousins to have a chance. I don't know.
If I'm lying, I'm flying. Okay.
Well, thank y'all again. Check us out on our next episode. Everybody have a good night.
Bye.